everyone, Kristina Werner here. Welcome to another card video for SiMisTheStamp.com. Today I'm going to be showing you a couple cards made using supplies in the May 2019 card kit. That stamp set is called Delicate Flowers, and I'm going to use that for a little stamping, but I'm also going to use some alcohol inks to create backgrounds. So I have 2 sheets of YUPO paper that are included in the kit. Putting down a surface to protect my craft mat here, and I'm also going to be wearing some latex gloves because I really don't want to get this ink on my hands. A lot of people, it doesn't bother them, but for me, I like to keep my hands clean, and these can be a little bit messy sometimes. In the end, I don't think I needed the gloves because I kept my hands fairly clean. But if you are in the same camp that I am and you want to keep your hands clean, you might want to invest in some latex gloves. So I'm using the pink shade that's in the kit, and then I'm going to use the blending solution, which you can sort of think of as water being applied to watercolor. See how adding that in makes that pink color start moving? So you can pick it up and kind of manipulate it, force that liquid to move. I've seen people blow air on it with a straw or even use a heat tool just to get the air blowing on it so that it starts to move. I'm going to speed up the video here so that you can see the entire process. This is a really fun process, speaking of. It's so great to add in lots of water or this blending solution and really get those colors mixing and moving. So I've got a lot of pink here. I want to show you, there was one area where it wasn't moving. It had like a dry spot, so I just touched it with my hand to get it wet. So now I'm going to bring in the blue shade, and these are going to mix in some areas to create a really cool purple color. And I want to force it to mix, so I'm picking up that paper, I smushed it down onto my work surface here, and I'm actually going to set this aside here in a minute, and I'm going to get my other sheet of YUPO paper and smush that down into what's left on my craft sheet. Or this is actually the Tonic Easy Clean mat. So I'm adding more of that blending solution to the pale colors on this one, and it really gets them moving. I loved this kind of second use of all of those inks that were on my surface here, and I really loved how I was able to dilute and really tone down those colors. A lot of alcohol inks can be pretty intense, which is really cool. That makes really saturated backgrounds. But for something that's a little bit more pale and muted, you might try this technique where you smush the alcohol inks onto a slick surface and then pick it up with a second sheet of YUPO paper. So I did want to mention that these alcohol inks really do work best on a slick surface like YUPO paper or glossy cardstock. You can try to use them on regular cardstock, but you won't get them moving as much. So I really love how I'm getting some streaks of color here. I'm going to set these aside to dry. I'm not going to touch them much more than this because I liked how they looked. To clean up my Easy Clean mat, I put a little bit of that blending solution down and then picked it up with a paper towel. So here are those backgrounds all dry. I'm going to hold them up in the light so you can see the pearlescent sheen. The alcohol inks I used today are the Pearl alcohol inks, and I believe you get 3 colors and then the blending solution in the card kit. So it's a really good value for all that you get. Plus you get that huge stamp set. So both of these backgrounds are on 8.5 by 5.5 sheets. So I'm going to cut them in half, and then I can get 4 cards out of these 2 sheets. I think it's going to be a great use of all of these backgrounds. So I absolutely love this lighter version. I'm actually not going to be turning those into a card today. I'm going to use the more saturated, brighter colors, but I think they look dreamy. I'm going to take this one that's completely coated, and I'm taking the stamps from the stamp set. I'm going to be stamping them in Tim Holtz Alcohol Lift ink. I think that's what it's called. I'm going to show you here the packaging of the ink pad here in a minute. But this ink is really, really cool because you can stamp it over an alcohol inked surface, and it's sort of, as the name implies, it lifts the color. So I'm going to liberally apply this ink over all of these stamps, and then I'll go ahead and stamp it down. Now I'm using a MISTI stamp positioning tool for this, in particular because this technique works best when you can stamp those images over and over again, especially when you have very dainty, thin lined images like I'm working with today from that Delicate Flower stamp set. So I took a dry paper towel and rubbed it over the surface, and that picks up that lift ink, and you can see the design of the stamps kind of eating away at the colors of alcohol ink on my YUPO paper. Because I want these images to be much more apparent, you can really see the design, I'm going to end up stamping these. I think I stamped it 3 or 4 times. And each time after I dabbed off the alcohol lift ink and then rubbed it with the paper towel, it intensified that design. It really lets the colors shine through. And I really love this kind of ghosting effect that you get from the lift ink. So some of you, if you've been subscribed to the Simus Stamp card kit for a few months, might remember when you got an alcohol lift ink pad in your card kit. There were also some alcohol inks included. So you can use them with the pearlescent alcohol inks. You can mix your card kit supplies. So I did an initial stamping and then came in with some more leaves on the side just to make sure I had the design stretching from corner to corner. And I ended up stamping this 4 times, I believe, as well. And each time when I rubbed it off, it got more intense. So here is my background. I've got the fun flowers up going across that top corner. And I'm going to set this one aside and do some stamping to have some images for my other card. Taking those same floral images from the Delicate Flower stamp set, and I'm stamping them in Simus Stamp Intense Black ink onto some white cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. This cardstock works really well with Copic markers, and I'm going to be using Copic markers, which are an alcohol marker, to color these flowers. So I stamped it once, and then I'm going to stamp it again just to get a really solid line. And I want to caution you, when you're stamping these really thin lined images, be very gentle. Don't press down too much. You don't want to blob out any of the lines. So here are all of the colors of Copic markers that I'm going to be using today. I'm going to be zoomed in for most of the coloring, so you won't be able to see the colors specifically. So I want to let you guys know exactly what colors I'm using. And these are colors that I thought would pair well with the colors of alcohol ink. I thought it would look really cool. So I'm doing really simple Copic coloring on this with 3 to 4 colors for each color grouping. And I basically start with a lighter shade, color in the entire area. And then I'm going to go to the medium shade, the dark shade, back to the medium shade, and then back to the light shade. So going light to dark and then reversing and going dark to light. That's the best way I found to get some really good blending. I'm going to turn on a little bit of music so you can watch the coloring process, and I'll be back when all of these images are colored and fussy cut out. I'm going to use a combination of a craft knife and scissors to cut out all of these images. Okay, so it's definitely a labor of love cutting all of those out, but it's completely worth it because then I can pop these up on my card using some foam adhesive later on. Got some black cardstock here. This is Licorice Twist cardstock from Basil, and I'm prepping it with an anti-static patter tool so I can stamp both of these greetings from the stamp set and heat emboss them. I'm using some Versamark ink for the stamping since this ink is very sticky and it works great with embossing powder. The embossing powder I'm using today is Alabaster from Brutus Monroe. It's a nice bright white. I sprinkled that on and made sure it coated all of those greetings and then shook off the excess. So I'm going to use my heat tool to heat set this until it's smooth and melted, and then I'm going to prep my card bases. I have some white cardstock here. It's that same cardstock I used for the flower coloring, and I'm scoring both of these at 5.5 to create a side folding card and a top folding card. I adhered the alcohol ink backgrounds using some Tombow Extreme adhesive. Just applied that to all 4 edges and then a little bit in the center, and that's going to make sure it sticks to these card bases without any problem. So for the other card, well, actually I should back that up. For the first card that has the entire alcohol ink background, I'm going to take one of the black greeting sentiments, put some foam squares on the back, and then put it directly over the top of that floral pattern area. I used a T-square ruler to make sure I got it on there straight, and then that card's basically finished. For the other card, I first adhered down my greeting strip in the bottom left corner of the card, and after I have that adhered, I'm going to be putting the flowers and the leaves over the top. So you'll notice that I actually have an extra flower that I did not use. I thought maybe I might need it, and ended up not needing it, so I can save that for another project. I cut down some very thin foam tape from Darice into smaller squares so that I could put it behind all of the leaves and the smaller flowers. And then I applied and adhered all of these images one by one and until everything was on there. I did end up cutting that larger leaf stem so that I could tuck it behind the flower. So those are the 2 cards I made today, as well as 2 extra backgrounds with the leftover alcohol ink. Hope you guys enjoyed. You can pick up the card kit for May 2019 over at simonsthestamp.com.